Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Simple English Podcast. I'm your host, Lisa, and today we're diving into a topic that almost every English learner has struggled with at some point. Picture this. You're watching a movie in English and you understand most of it, but when someone asks you a question in English, you freeze. Sound familiar?
Oh, absolutely, Lisa. It's such a common experience. I've met so many people who say, I can understand English, but I can't speak it. And honestly, it can be super frustrating.
Exactly. And that's what we're talking about today. Why this happens, and, more importantly, how to fix it. Joining me is our guest, Lucas, an experienced English teacher and language coach. As always, don't forget to check out the free PDF file in the comment section below to get the full transcript and vocabulary for this episode. Lucas, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Lisa. I'm excited to be here and share some tips. This is such an important topic because, let's face it, speaking English confidently can change your life.
Absolutely. So, whether you're tuning in from your couch, on your commute, or during a walk, stick around. We've got real-life examples, a fun fact, and practical advice just for you. All right, Lucas, let's dive deeper. Why do you think so many people can understand English but feel stuck when it's time to speak?
Great question, Lisa. One big reason is what I like to call the passive-active gap. Understanding is passive. You're listening or reading. Speaking, though, is active. You have to recall words, form sentences, and say them out loud, all at the same time. That's a lot of work for your brain.
That makes sense. It's like watching someone cook versus actually cooking yourself. Watching looks easy, but when you try it, you realize how many steps are involved.
Exactly. And another reason is fear. Many learners worry about making mistakes or sounding silly. Let me give you an example. I once had a student, Maria, who could understand her favorite English TV shows perfectly. But whenever she tried to talk to someone in English, she froze. Why? She was afraid of being judged.
Oh, poor Maria. But I bet she's not alone. Fear is a big obstacle for many people. What can they do to overcome it?
Practice is the key to overcoming fear. But let's break that down. First, create a safe space for yourself. Talk to yourself in English at home. Describe your day, your plans, or even what's in your fridge. It might feel silly at first, but it's a great way to get comfortable with speaking.
That's a great tip. I've also heard about shadowing. You listen to someone speaking and try to repeat exactly what they say, right?
Yes, shadowing is fantastic. It's like mimicking a native speaker. You're not just practicing pronunciation, you're also learning natural sentence structures and rhythm. For example, you can try shadowing a scene from a movie or a podcast like this one.
Ooh, maybe our listeners can shadow this podcast. What else can people do?
Another helpful technique is to record yourself speaking. Play it back and listen to how you sound. It can be a little uncomfortable at first, but it's a great way to track your progress.
True, and it helps you notice areas for improvement like pronunciation or fluency. What about people who say, I don't have anyone to practice with?
Good question. These days, it's easier than ever to find a language partner online. There are apps like Tandem or Hello Talk where you can connect with people who want to practice your language while helping you practice theirs. And if that feels intimidating, start with chat. Writing can bridge the gap to speaking.
That's so true. And let's not forget about technology. Tools like voice assistants, Alexa, Siri, or Google can be great for practicing. You can ask them questions or give commands in English.
Exactly. And here's another thing. Don't underestimate the power of reading aloud. If you're reading a book, newspaper, or even subtitles on a video, try reading it out loud. It trains your mouth to get used to forming English words.
That's brilliant. It's like exercising your English muscles. And speaking of muscles, I've heard that pronunciation can be tricky because some sounds don't exist in a learner's native language. Is that true?
Yes, that's absolutely true. For example, the TH sound in English doesn't exist in many languages. Learners might replace it with a D or S sound, which is fine at first. But over time, practicing those tricky sounds will help you sound more natural.
That reminds me, accent reduction is another area that can hold people back. Some learners feel embarrassed because of their accent. What's your take on that?
Accents are a part of your identity, and having one isn't a bad thing. The goal should be clarity, not perfection. Focus on being understood, not sounding like a native speaker. Think about how many native English speakers have regional accents, and they communicate just fine.
I love that. Communication over perfection. Speaking of that, some learners say they can't find the right words when speaking, even though they know them. What's happening there?
That's called retrieval failure. Your brain knows the word, but it's like the file is buried in a cluttered drawer. To fix this, repetition is key. Use new words and sentences, write them down, and say them out loud. The more you use a word, the easier it becomes to recall.
Great advice. What about grammar? Should learners focus on it when speaking, or should they just wing it?
I'd say don't let grammar hold you back. Think about toddlers. They don't know grammar rules, but they still communicate. As long as your message is clear, that's what matters. Grammar improves naturally over time as you speak more.
That's a relief for a lot of listeners, I bet. So, to recap, it's about practice, embracing mistakes, and focusing on communication. Any final tips before we move on, Lucas?
Yes, immerse yourself as much as possible. Surround yourself with English through music, movies, podcasts, and conversations. Even if you're not speaking all the time, your brain is absorbing patterns and structures that will help you when you do speak.
I love that. It's like creating an English bubble for yourself. These tips are gold, Lucas. I hope our listeners are taking notes because this advice is so practical.
Thanks, Lisa. Remember, speaking is a skill, and every word you say in English is a step forward. Keep at it, and you'll see progress.
All right, Lucas, let's take a quick break from tips and share a fun fact. Did you know that the average adult English speaker knows around 20,000 to 35,000 words, but in daily conversations they only use about 3,000?
Wow, that's such a small percentage. But it's also great news for learners. You don't need to know every word in the dictionary to have meaningful conversations.
Exactly. Focus on learning those high-frequency words first. It's like having the most useful tools in your toolbox.
That's right. And here's another fun fact. Studies show that the more you use a word, the easier it becomes to recall it in the future. So, repetition really is key.
Love that. So, listeners, next time you're learning new words, remember practice makes permanent. Well, Lucas, we've covered a lot today. Let's quickly recap for our listeners. First, understanding English is passive, but speaking is active, so it takes more effort and practice.
Right. And don't let fear hold you back. Start small, speak often, and don't worry about making mistakes. Focus on communication, not perfection.
And remember, you don't need a huge vocabulary to start speaking. Just learn the basics and build from there.
Absolutely. Speaking is a skill, and like any skill, it improves with practice. So, don't give up.
Great advice, Lucas. Thank you so much for joining us today. You've given us so much to think about.
My pleasure, Lisa. And to everyone listening, keep going. You're doing great.
All right, folks, that's it for today's episode. If you enjoyed this conversation, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this podcast with your friends. And as always, keep practicing, and we'll see you in the next episode of the Simple English Podcast. Bye for now. Now it's time to learn some important vocabulary related to the topic. The first word of today is fluency. It means the ability to speak a language easily and smoothly. Example: listening to podcasts can improve your English fluency. Next word is accent. It means a distinctive way of pronouncing a language, often related to a region or country. Example: your accent doesn't need to be perfect as long as you're understood. Next word is shadowing. It means a language learning technique where you listen and immediately repeat what is heard. Example: shadowing podcasts is a great way to practice intonation and rhythm. Next word is retrieval. It means the process of recalling information stored in memory. Example: repetition helps with word retrieval during conversations. Next word is mistake. It means an action or judgment that is incorrect or wrong. Example: making mistakes is a natural part of learning a new language. The last word is immersion. It means the process of surrounding yourself with a language to improve learning. Example: immersion in English media helps you pick up natural expressions. Thank you for listening to our episode of the Simple English Podcast. I hope you learned something new and helpful today. Please give us a like and subscribe for video like this. Share it with your friends, and let us know what you think in the comments section below. We'll be back with more interesting discussions soon.